Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to another Into the Darkness. That's right, my segment on the channel that is dedicated to films and potentially television shows, all within the horror genre. And the evening, me and my good friends, my co-host and partner in crime a lot on my channel, Mr. DJ Anubis of the Metal Tavern Radio, is here to join me, and alongside Mr. Anthony Jordan of Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming. And as always, we are here to talk about another much loved or popular horror franchise, and the franchise chosen is Wreck. So we'll start off with the question we'll always ask. Can you remember the first time you heard of or had seen Wreck? We'll start this time with Mr. Anthony Jordan.
I first heard of it shortly after seeing Quarantine for the first time, which I did not see on TV. I seen on cable, and it was a friend that pointed out, oh, that's a remake of a Spanish horror film, and that one went unwatched until a couple weeks ago when I watched it for this.
Yeah. DJ Anubis.
Not too unsimilar to what Anthony said. Now, I remember when Quarantine got released, and this is at the height of Jennifer Carpenter, who had just done Exorcist of Emily Rose and Dexter and stuff. So she was starting to make her rounds into modern or mainstream movies and stuff. So I was like, wow, Quarantine sounds interesting. But then again, somebody on the line said, well, this is actually remade off of a movie called Wreck. And so I actually went and watched this version, the Spanish version. I've never actually seen the Carpenter one yet. That's what's funny. But I went and watched this one. I did really like it a lot. So that kind of began my journey with watching these films, because they'd already put out like a sequel and all that since then. So
for me, I heard about Wreck when obviously after the Blair Witch Project, which was like found footage film. That was like the new big thing in Hollywood, where every studio was doing these found footage movies, like Paranormal Activity. But then we've had Cloverfield, Chernobyl Diaries. I had heard of them all, and I had seen the majority of them. And then someone recommended me Wreck and said, "Well, there's actually this Spanish found footage horror film that's about zombies, and I think you need to give it a look." And I remember seeing the first one and really enjoying it, but I haven't seen the first one in a long time, and I didn't even know until we started talking about potentially doing Wreck that it got up to 4. I knew that they had and the last one I remember was the wedding one, so I never had seen the 4th one. And then about a couple of weeks ago, I finally got to finish the series by watching the 4th one, which we were talking before we started, how we've done a number of franchises, and a number of them, like for example Wishmaster or Pumpkinhead, it generally starts off, the first one's always the best one, the second one might potentially be the second best, and then they kind of go and do their own thing once they go to direct video or streaming, when the budget drops and the storytelling kind of goes in a different direction. And most of the movies end up being just standalone sequels, where I find with Wreck, the one thing I did like, for me personally, that it's not completely perfect. There is a little bit of loopholes in the plot and like certain elements within it, but for the majority and the most part, it stays quite consistent. And the one thing I really enjoy about the Wreck franchise from 1, 2, and 4 is that they brought the same actress back to play the lead character, who I think's phenomenal. I think she's very stunning. She's a beautiful lady, and she never disappoints. think she's brilliant in this. That's our leading lady. And I'm going to try and say a name because we always laugh when I fuck up the names. So I believe the actress is called Manuela Velasco.
Perfect.
And I'm sticking to that. So Manuela Velasco is the name of this lovely lady, and she's our leading lady in the first two, and then she kind of gets reference, or there's kind of, you know, she's not, I can't remember off the top of my head if you see her in the third one, but I do know there's kind of a passing reference because you do see when the groom's in the control center, there's a television high above the door behind it, and you can see the events of the second one or the 1st one transpiring. So that's kind of the only real link. Well, there's another link, but we'll get into that later. But let's get cracking and talk about Wreck. And we're going to start, of course, with the one that started it all, the very first one. So the first movie it came out in 2007, and it is Wreck, is a 2007 Spanish found footage zombie film co-written and directed by Jermaine Belaguro and Paco Plaza. The film stars Manuela Velasco as a reporter who, with her cameraman, accompanies a group of firefighters on an emergency call to an apartment building to discover an infection spreading inside, with the building being sealed up and all occupants ordered to follow a strict quarantine.
Yeah, Manuela was cast because she was a reporter in real life at the time.
Oh, amazing. Well, since you brought it up, Anthony, why don't you get us started and you tell her a bit about the plot?
Well, the movie starts our main character, Angela Vidal. She's a reporter, and she does this kind of nighttime variety show called, I think, While You're Sleeping, and she covers various occupations that happen at night. Well, this time she's covering a police fire station, and she's spending time recording with the firefighters, learning about them and learning about their trade. And it's a great scene that just immediately establishes, okay, these characters are all likable. Like, even just them having fun together, teaching her seeing things, or the basketball scene. And again, this is what she was doing in real life, so you're not even necessarily seeing acting for her at this point yet, just doing what she does every day. And then they get a alarm and all load up in the truck, and they go to this apartment building and find out that there's screaming going on from one of the apartments, and these poor firefighters are the first ones to respond on scene.
Yeah. And you slowly then get to know a number of the residents within, inside the apartment building. You have the mother of a young girl who's got a fever, who's not very well. You have guess, I guess he's like he looks after the apartment caretaker. He looks after everyone, like all the buildings. He has the keys and all that locked in his room, and you meet like this Chinese woman who sees she's got a sick father up in their apartment. And you meet the firefighters, and there's two particular ones that you grow a bond with. And what ends up happening is that the police are called, as well as firefighters, and they go up to a room because they basically say that an elderly woman is acting, suspicious. She's acting, like crazy. So when they go to investigate this lady in this room, she's covered in blood in a white nightie. She's got a long grey hair, like all over the place, and she ends up attacking one of the firemen. And he gets bitten in quite a grotesque scene. And the next thing you know, he's now infected, and it just starts the ball rolling of like this whole place being now under quarantine. You see the people outside locking the doors. You see like these screens being put over windows and doors so no one can see in or out. And it turns into, like you say, this in quarantine zone where everybody's in fear. There's tension, there's atmosphere. It was a great, and very suspenseful as well. Anubis, what's your opinion of this whole scenario taking place?
I like it. It's a good, as you said, I didn't even know she was a real reporter, so that really makes sense because they said that the directors chose actors that weren't well known because they wanted it to remain as real as possible. So you didn't really want to see any familiar faces, and it works because obviously, I mean, I don't know many Spanish actors or actresses, but if you're in that, if you're living in Spain and you're familiar with her just as far as a personality, well, then you're kind of like, oh, this looks real life. Like, she's in the firehouse, chatting with the guys, playing basketball, as Anthony pointed out. So it all looks like you're legit. Like they're just trying to see. They were actually waiting for action. Like they're like, is there anything ever going to happen here? Are we just walking around talking to people? And finally, when it does happen, you got them in this apartment building, and the next thing you know, chaos erupts, and then you got these people on the outside sealing up the building. And it's like, that's like a real creep factor because that means how do they know what's even going on inside here? Like, people are already just, packing it up and locking it off. And the worst part is if you try to leave, they will shoot you dead. Like they don't waste time with that. So it's very serious.
Which is probably preferable.
Right.
And things even get worse as the film progresses. So obviously one of I think it was the policeman gets bitten and they take him and they've taken him into a room and the other policeman's there, the fireman's there, and they're basically trying to just keep control of this situation. But things get even worse when all of a sudden the other fireman who's above, who's kind of guarding the door, I suppose, where this lady was, suddenly comes flying and hits the floor after being thrown off the banister, and it's just hurled down the stairs and just splatters on the floor, which even creates an even bigger bad situation. And as it progresses, you slowly, each of the residents start to get desperate, they start to panic, and it's then revealed that they believe there's an infection in the building, and the infection comes, what they believe, from a dog, because they had a dog called Max, the woman who had the young child who's got the fever, and the child's called, I think she was called Jennifer. And the young child called Jennifer tells the reporter the story of how she had a dog who was suddenly got unwell, had to take the dog to the vets, and then apparently the dog acted erratic, and they ended up they thought the dog probably would have had rabies or something, so they ended up having to put the dog down. But unknown to them, of course, the dog's clearly bit somebody, or potentially the lady up in the bedroom, because I can't remember if they ever revealed how that woman became infected.
Well, it's implied. I think one of the recordings we hear towards the end, and we'll get to that, but it does mention something about the guy who made the recording being worried bugs can transfer the infection.
All right. So there you go. So then, as things progress, they obviously hear this, and then they hear that the infection travels through bite marks, and obviously that policeman's been bitten. The reporters who are trying to cover everything, they kind of sneak into the room next to where the policeman's been chained up, and the guy who's the one who looks after the building, who's like the caretaker of the building, he's in the room with him, and then they suddenly get somebody who comes from the outside into the building. Apparently he's a scientist or he's a doctor, and he's in all the yellow quarantine gear. So he comes in, and he basically is like, I'm here to check for infections, I'm here to check on control of the situation. And when he goes into the room with, of course, the policeman, who's now he gets, you know, handcuffed to like the table that he's laid on, the same with the other guy. The next thing you know, the two guys come hinged and start acting erratic and start attacking the people that are in the room with them. And the next thing you know, they've got to now escape the room because things are starting to escalate. The caretaker of the buildings gets left in the room because he's been bitten, and he suddenly it's like he turns into the Incredible Hulk or something, because now he's like bashing through freaking doors and he's chasing after them. There's this giant shutter that they have to pull down, and it's once they pull the shutter down, and the guy who's like this doctor or you know, from the agency outside, he starts letting the residents finally know the events that are happening. He's saying there's an infection in the building. If you're bitten, you get a bad temperature, and how the infection works, it depends on your blood type. So depending on your blood type, or I guess if you're panicking or whatever your situation may be, the virus might, you know, develop slowly within your body, or it can develop fast.
From hours to just seconds.
Yeah. So the sense look at Jennifer, the young girl, and they now start to realize she's got a temperature. The mother's insisting that the reason she's got a temperature is because she's got tonsillitis and she's not well. And the father's outside trying to get her medicine from the chemist. But obviously they start at all the residents, because of the events that are transpiring, they're kind of freaked out. They kind of surround the mother, and she's holding Jennifer, the daughter, and then she's cuddling her daughter. Then all of a sudden we get this amazing shot of her daughter Jennifer going crazy and attacks her own mother and bites her, which I kind of seen coming straight away, but I didn't. But this is, oh well, that's not
You can
Jennifer.
kind of see like the moment like where the infection takes hold because she's looking at her mother for a second before she attacks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the scene where the fire officer and the policeman were in the room with the caretaker of the building, and they had him strapped to a chair, chained like with handcuffs. So as you can see, he came bursting through that door and came chasing after them. So far, once again, I was blown away because the plot suddenly like takes another turn where, you know, now the child's been infected and the child bites the mother. They then end up handcuffing the mother to the staircase, and the child is now running up the staircase, and they're saying, "You've got to go and get the kid. You've got to stop the kid from getting infected." And that's from spreading the infection, and that's coming from the guy who's like from the quarantine, the doctor from the quarantine. But as the child runs up the stairs and they go try tracking down the child, they can hear more noises and shit going on upstairs. And then all of a sudden, Hercules, I'm going to call him, the Hulk, the guy who was the caretaker, is now trying to pull the shutter up. And the guy who's like trying to protect the guy who's meant to be telling them what to do in the yellow, you know, quarantine suit, he starts to panic and decides to run up the stairs and kind of, you know, escape everything and hide and leave the people who are stuck in the building on the ground floor. So they then end up chasing him up the stairs or trying to save themselves. And what's the first thing that they're now infected caretaker, the infected policeman, and the other infected policeman do? They go straight for the mother who's chained to the staircase, and then start feeding on her. Which it's some great gory stuff. Like, the one thing I will say about the first wreck, I was on the edge of my seat because it does bring atmosphere and tenseness, and you generally, I think, are generally scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. How about you, Anthony? Did you find it generally frightening?
Well, yes and no. Why I found it creepy and like atmospheric because I had seen Quarantine already. Like the suspense was also completely gone because I pretty
Yeah.
much knew what was going to happen. But looking at the two films side by side, and I know this isn't a versus, I would say this is the creepier of the two.
Yeah,
Like
definitely. I think always the first ones can be.
the
Most of the time,
shot I
yeah.
found the most terrifying is when they found the little girl and they're approaching her.
Oh,
Like just
yeah,
that shot of the infected little girl is the most terrifying image in the movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So she's now infected, and like she must have been the one who had the slow burn infection where it took hours, not seconds, to be infected.
I think
Because
with her too, some of it came because the infection came from the dog licking her face, so it wasn't a bite or something that would have released a bigger infection in her.
yeah. So the next scene we get is, of course, they now ran up the stairs. Everybody's in a panic. The Chinese ladies ran up the stairs. Anybody else has ran up the stairs. And the reporter and the cameraman who are filming the full situation, who just want to record the event so they've got proof and evidence of everything that's going on, they start banging on doors and they end up going into a room with one of the firemen as well, into this man's room who's like, he was one who was recorded getting an interview earlier who was like looking at this as an opportunity to become famous or something. He was like sitting there smiling, like tweaking his hair, his mustache, and wanting to be on telly. And the next thing you know, it's his apartment, and they find the guy, Hayden, who was the doctor from the infection control people. And he's like locked behind this door, and he's like, you can't come in because I'm infected, because I've been bitten. And they're going crazy at him, saying, you were out to try and protect us, and you've basically done fuck all for it. We're now dying. We're surrounded. Yeah, there's no way out. But then the gentleman of the apartment suddenly remembers that the caretaker of the building has keys in his apartment. And the keys in his apartment can lead to like a drain that they can open up, and if they go down like this staircase into the sewer system at the back of the building, they'll be able to escape and get to this front street through going through that way. But the only way to get to that set of keys is to go further up the building, past basically the infected people, and get to the caretaker's room, which is no easy task. And just as that's happening, I knew this was going to happen. No, I knew straight away this was going to happen. The man that's told him this and what to do, because he's standing very close to where the shutter door is, the man who was infected, the scientist, suddenly comes grabbing out and starts ripping the hell out of his face and pulling on his flesh. And so he's now infected and slowly returning into zombified freakazoid or whatever the hell you want to call them. Like in this particular one, they're all basically copycats of the zombies from 28 Days Later, where it's like a rage virus.
Yeah.
That's what we think, at least up to this point. And this is where things get really, really interesting, the last half of this film. Because the last half of this film is they end up going up and they battle their way and they finally get to the person's apartment, the caretaker's apartment. But along the way, they lose the other fireman who's trying to protect them. He's infected. Basically, there's only 2 people truly left alive. and that, of course, is the cameraman and the reporter. They ended up going into this room, which is supposed to be the caretaker's penthouse. And when they go into this room, there's no lights on. It's very dark. His camera's kind of running low on power, so he ends up having to put the camera on night mode. And I think this makes the film look even creepier. So there's only night mode, and as they go around the room, they see all of these religious artifacts. They see, crucifixes. They see pictures of, like religious imagery on the walls. They see
Kind of like a road map.
yeah, like a road map. Yeah, they see like all the newspaper articles talking about this girl way back many years ago who they believe was possessed by a demon, and they had tried some sort of exorcism. And then they see like a lot of like creepy veils laid about and like scientific equipment, and it suddenly goes from being a zombie film to some sort of supernatural movie, like on a whim. Which, I'll be honest, I cannot remember this when I first seen it the first time, but it must show you how good the film must have been, because when I've seen this again most recently, it's still surprised that it took this different turn. How did you guys feel when it went from just being a basic found footage film about zombies in a building to now being something totally different?
I thought it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I actually didn't catch it the first time I saw him, so that's why this time around when I, refocused on it and rewatched him, like I was a little surprised.
mm-hmm. Definitely. And it was like, I always remember when she's in the apartment and all you saw was the different images of this girl, and they talked about her blood and how they had moved her to places and had like tried, saving her, and like I think they actually killed her and then they had to move her body, but she wasn't dead. And there's all of these kind of information, and then they found the recordings and they were playing the recordings. And as they were playing the recordings, they were hearing all of this doctor talking about how he was trying to find this cure for this demonic plague. So it's basically revealed that the plague that is infecting the people of the building isn't just like a medical virus. It's not something scientific. It's some sort of demonic plague that's come from hell, that if it gets in your blood, it basically turns you into, like, I guess, you get basically turned into, like, I guess, some sort of vessel for like a demonic being.
It's kind of like a vampirism.
Like a vampirism, but for demons of hell.
Mm-hmm.
And that, once again, is another huge twist. And then, as you can imagine, there's a lot of creepy noises and things going on. And there's one particular scene where, as they're walking through a door and they go into this really dark room with all this religious thing, suddenly like a hatch from the loft collapses and it's hanging there. So what does the cameraman decide to do? The one thing you shouldn't do, he decides to stick his head through the gap of the loft. And as he's going around with the camera, you're suddenly presented with this creepy little face, like staring at him. And the next thing you know, he is suddenly attacked, and I'm assumed killed. I think he got hit in the head with a hammer or something.
Yeah.
Gets hit in the head by a hammer by this unknown entity that looks like a real creepy naked lady. And then the next scene you get is she's on her own now, the news reporter, and you can just see her looking around in absolute fear. And the next thing you know, she falls to the floor and she looks up at the camera. You see that her eyes just open in absolute terror. And the camera cuts out as she's starting to get her body dragged away by some unforeseen force.
Yep.
So it ends on a shocker, and it ends. Put it this way: the end for this was more entertaining for me than the end of the Blair Witch.
Oh yeah,
where he literally just stands at the back of in the bottom of the basement at a fucking wall, and then it cuts out.
yeah, that's true.
So at least you're left with something.
Mhm.
So what in all, what's your thought of this one, Anubis? Like how
No,
this one
it's
goes?
good. It's a good film. Still highly recommend it. It's tensive, unique, and there's great acting despite the fact they're not like well-known actors. It's done very well. Like when you want to shoot a realistic cam movie, this is the way to do it. Like I'm actually, you kind of brought up Blair Witch. I know what Blair Witch started a lot of different things for the genre and not, but this is how it's been mastered. This is the kind of
Yes.
masterful job you do with it.
Blair Witch just feels too staged.
Yeah, exactly.
This had genuine fear for me.
Now, granted, their budgets are vastly different, so that plays a part as well. But this, from what I recall, it was like $2 million to make, but it made like 32.5 million in the box office, so it did really well.
How about you, Anthony Jordan? What's your overall thoughts of the first movie?
Pretty much the same thing Anubis said, and I'm not the biggest found footage fan, but I thought this is one of the better examples of how to do found footage.
I agree. So obviously with the first one, we're left on a big cliffhanger. You just assume, obviously, if you didn't know that a sequel was coming, I would have been still quite satisfied because you could have kind of in your own way, in your head, made up your own mind of what happened next. But luckily, we didn't have to wait long because we were blessed with a sequel. And it's not very often that you get a sequel that, in my opinion, is just as fun as the first one. So we are here now to talk about Rec 2. So here we go. Let, as always, get cracking again with Rec 2. So Rec 2 it came out in 2009. It's a found footage zombie film sequel to the 2000 film Rec and the second installment of the Rec film series. The film was written and directed by German Balaguerro and Paco Plaza, both of whom returned from the previous film. The story takes place immediately after the events of the first film and follows a team of soldiers assigned to protect a scientist supposedly sent to investigate the cause of the outbreak, but who may already know more about it than he claims. So, this one was made on a budget of 5.6 million and it made 18.5 million. So it didn't do as well as the first one, but I still think it's a worthy sequel. So, Anubis, do you want to talk a little bit about the second one?
Yep. What I did like, and this was a nice touch, was you had the SWAT team coming in, and instead of just doing like the usual camera shots like we get in the first one, this time we've got like little video boxes for their cams, and I thought that was a sweet touch. I really liked that a lot.
Helmet cams.
Yep. That was a nice touch in this. Now, plot wise, it kind of just follows the same format that the first one has. You just got people going through the building, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to find survivors. We do end up coming across Angela Vidal again later in the film. That's sort of where some of my problems with this one comes from, because we don't really have a good setup for why she's still alive. Like in the first one, we assume she's toast. Like, you know, we just figure she's gone. Now we do find out later on what happens, but I think I would have much preferred them when the SWAT team came across her that maybe she was unconscious or something. That would have been a little more sense than her just showing up out of nowhere. I think, does she have like a saw or a weapon of some kind? I think it had a shotgun, right?
Yeah, she had a gun in her hand. Yeah.
Yeah, so when she
She got
first showed up,
shotgun from one of the.
yeah.
I'm trying to. Oh, that was the priest that grabbed the shotgun from one of the guys.
Yeah, either way, she shows up and she's standing and there's no like trauma. And so you're kind of like, what happened here? You know, now we do find out why, but that's just some of my little nitpicks of this film. But I do like a lot of it again, but it just kind of follows the same thing that we have from the first film. But it's pretty decent. I mean, I eventually will rank these all in order, but you know, it's decent.
So it's Dr. Owens. He's an official from the Ministry of Health. So he claims and he's joined by a heavy armed GEO team of 4: Fernando, Martios, Rosso, and Lara. And they are equipped with video cameras and body cams and are sent into the quarantined apartment. So basically, as the plot progresses, it's very similar to the first one. They enter the building, it's the exact same building from the first one. You see, like, the blood, you see scattered blood everywhere. You just see it's very eerie, it's very creepy. It has like the same tones and feels of the first one for me. The only thing I got kind of frustrated with was because the way the first one ended as well, basically everybody that lived in that apartment was infected and became possessed or demonified or zombified, and they were all basically running up the stairs. So as these people enter the building, there's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
That, you know, you would have thought if all those people are demonified or zombified, there would be there's only 4 people from this, you know, the military that's been sent in the building.
Right.
And, you know, you would have thought as they were walking around, they would have bumped into at least 1 or 2 of the people that were infected straight away and would have been attacked.
It takes too long for them to show up.
Yeah. So they do eventually, the people I'm talking about, the people who were originally in the building, do eventually make an appearance, but it's, you know, as the film progresses. But obviously they're trying to build the plot and to try to like create a story. And the story as it progresses is that it's finally revealed that Dr. Owen is not a doctor at all. He's actually been sent by the Catholic Church. And he's in disguise because they believe that there is an entity in the building that is creating this demonic plague that's now starting to spread, and the need to stop it. There's a demon that's basically in control of everything. And that's probably another reason why the zombies probably didn't go straight after them. They walked in because he's playing mind games. He's trying to scare them, and you know, you do see one of them get, you know, attacked earlier on in the film, and this is one of the best scenes, I feel. He gets attacked, you know, then bump into the old woman again from the first film. The bump into the...
I'm glad you brought that up. And maybe you guys can explain some of this to me. So, how is she still alive?
Yeah, that's the thing. Because she gets shot multiple times in the first one. Then she was still alive.
Some of these movies, like the minute they're shot, they're done, they're gone. So you figure the vessels are gone. She's not the host, so obviously she should be dead.
I think
and the only reason why I bring this up is, I know we're going to still get to the other 2 films, but the whole purpose of this demonic possession is that this demon wants to get out into the open world. Like, there comes a part in the third one where we start seeing a priest talk about the end of days. Well, this is sort of the purpose of this demon. So I keep saying to myself, well, if they're not all dying from gunshots, why aren't they just bull roasting right out of the building? Like, if they can still get back up, what stopped them? So I don't know. Maybe you guys can explain me why she's still alive. I don't know
think
this.
it was stated at some point you do have to shoot them in the head.
Okay, so they have to be headshots.
And as far as like bull, I can't answer to why they didn't bull rush out windows, but as far as the front door goes, I'm pretty sure a door to an apartment like that would be like this thick.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So that's true. But if I do remember in the first one where they did shoot her and she collapsed, they didn't shoot her in the head, they shot her like multiple times in the body. So maybe Anthony's right. You have to, and I'm sure it is. It's I don't know if it's the third film or even the fourth film where you do see them get shot directly in the head.
Which
So,
leads us, yeah, I'll talk about when I get there, but yeah, okay.
but
If it's headshots, okay.
I forget.
Yeah.
I think it was the little girl. They were like trying to restrain her, and that's when the priest pulls the shotgun out from one of the guys and just blows her head off. And that's when it's established you have to shoot them in the head.
Yeah. And speaking of headshots, so one of the guys is attacked by, I think, was the little girl. He gets attacked by the little girl, who then, like you've mentioned, the priest kills her. Blows her head off, but the guy's been bitten and he's immediately changes into one of them. And the guy, Dr. Owens, then he gets locked in a room and then he like stabs a knife into the door and puts a crucifix on. Next thing you know, the guy's totally quiet. And it's like, oh, well, that's different. And then it's because he's done that, the other soldiers around him are like trying to figure out things. And they're like, this guy isn't just, he's not just a scientist. And like I said earlier, it's like eventually revealed he's from the Catholic Church and that he tells them this story how the building is infected, but not just by a virus, it's a demonic virus that, you know, if you're bitten, your body and your soul will be taken over by a demonic entity that will use your body as like a vessel kind of thing. But there is a way to stop it, and that is to find the original host of the virus that started, and it's the body of the girl that many years ago was possessed by this demon, who somehow went from around the world fucking to end up in this freaking apartment in Spain, in the top penthouse apartment, no less.
You
As
think
they're
they
doing
researching in some secure facility somewhere.
Yeah. But I'm assuming that the priest who was doing the research and the science on the body of the original host, I think he's obviously done it vigilante style. I think he's stolen the body and he's went into hiding in the top of this apartment and he started doing all of this research on his own without permission from the church, and they've been probably looking for him for years.
Yeah, I've gotten that feeling he's like a rogue priest for sure.
Yeah, definitely, because the way it was set up, because if this was the way of the church, he would, like you mentioned, it would be like the first one, you would be doing it on, like, say, the boat in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
The fact that he's hiding in a penthouse apartment with nobody, you know, there's no, like, secret doors, there's no bodyguards, there's no nothing around. It's just this creepy old apartment with all this religious, you know, artifacts and that around and on the walls and stuff. So he gotta be like Anubis said, like a rogue police who's like went on the vigilante.
Admittedly, there's a very good security protocol in there that I would have loved some explanation for how this thing actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he finally reveals who he is. The soldiers are pretty much pissed off. And one of the other guys, when he's, you know, the out kind of trying to just get round the building, all of the zombies that were seen in the first movie finally show up. And they chase him, you know, the chase after this one particular guy who has a body camera and that on. As they're going up and down the staircase, and they see, you know, the father of the girl from who was at the chemist to bring the medicine, who also gets into the building. He, you know, he was with them for a small time, but you seen him come flying over the banister and hit the deck. As well. They just love throwing people over fucking banisters in these movies.
These nuisance streamers also managed to get in the building.
Yeah, that's the Bear's heading next. So basically, part of the plot is, as they're frantically trying to get away from these zombies, when the father of the girl gets hide and thrown down the banister, you kind of they look down, but as they look down, they see these young kids standing there with a camera, and they're like, "Who the hell are them?" And then out of panic, they disappear, but you don't know where they went, and then they get split up. The soldier guys, one ends up in the apartment. And then when the apartment they're in gets overflowed by zombies, but instead of allowing them to convert him and kill him, he's got his body camera on, and he kind of looks at the bathroom mirror at the bathroom where he's at, and he like puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger because he goes out the way he wants to go out. And as we mentioned, you've got these young, like, you know, I guess wannabe influencers or social media influencers.
Johnny Somalis.
Yeah, with the cameras and pranksters and all. The film takes an unexpected turn where the story now switches from having, like you mentioned, the body cameras and all of them angles, which was a different look to the movie from the first one, but then it kind of reverts back to what the first one brought, with just having a one view from a video camera. Because this next part of the next few, next quarter of the movie is following these young kids that want to break into the building because they're being nosy and they want to see what's going on, and they do get in the building, but how they get in the building is through the sewer system and through the little hatch, the same hatch that in the end of the first movie they were trying to get the key to get down there to open it to escape. So they basically use the way to get in the building how they were attempting to get out the building in the first one, which I thought was a genius part of the plot, because it kind of keeps it consistent, it kind of keeps it flowing, and it kind of,
except for one problem. The one problem is that the police didn't think about it, knowing how to lay out the building. Like, imagine them getting out in the first one, like, and there's somebody that's infected, like, somehow that just slipped all the cops' minds.
Yeah,
and people
getting out through the sewers would have been end game.
Yeah, It's like, okay, somebody's gonna lose their job over this because you forgot the one area that we need to protect.
But I agree with that. I do agree that is crazy. But then when they did get into the building, remember, and they go up into that part of the building, like the warehouse part of the building, they bump into the policeman. And they bump into like another guy, and it's like, who must have also somehow snuck into the building. But
I don't know. I think at one point the cops did ask him how they got in, and that's when they explained to him about the sewer. So even though I don't expect the cops to know per se, like the whole layout, like the health people or whoever who were trying to seal up the building, they should have known about the schematics of the building.
They would have pulled the building's blueprints, and they would have known about the.
Yeah. But I mean, I get it, because for a movie's sake, we have to have this. We have to have it. Otherwise, we can't do a movie. So it's got to be there.
But it's like, I found it strange when they bumped into the policeman. Where did the policeman come from? They must have just walked through the front door.
Yeah, I think they did. I think because they had permission to go back in the building. So
I think the policeman was escorting the husband with the medication to his daughter's apartment.
Was that the case? Because I can't remember, but obviously they also had the guy that was supposedly the health inspector. So I think what happened is they lost contact with it, the firemen and everyone else. So these guys went in to see what was going on. And instead of just being firemen, they were armed. So they figured, okay, we know there's crazy shit going on. So we're going to go in, see if anybody's alive, and take our guns with us. So I don't know. Was the father in there with them too? I don't remember.
He was the
did
one. He had the
in there.
medication for, because you know how in the first one, Jennifer, the daughter, basically she had a high temperature, she had tonsillitis, and the thought that that's all it was. So the mother kept on insisting, my husband's outside the building, he's got our medication from the chemist. Can you please let him in, or can we go outside? And obviously they weren't allowed out. He wasn't allowed in, and then suddenly he's in the building with this policeman. So I'm assuming when
That
they,
shouldn't have happened.
yeah, absolutely, that for me is total bullshit and fake.
Yeah.
So
that would've happened.
I'm assuming when the policeman and the inspector were going at the building, he's begged them to let him go in with them. Which, and he would have said, I've got a young daughter who needs this medicine. He would have probably played on it and said, you know, she's got a fucking terminal illness or something. I need to give her meds. It's the only way I can think of you would let a civilian into a building that's under quarantine.
Realistically, though, if you look what shouldn't have happened, when you go back to the first movie and the whoever those people were that came in, like I'm like, realistically, shouldn't it have been okay? Everyone that doesn't run a fever is getting extracted and being put into our quarantine. This way, there are less vectors to spread the virus in here.
That's true. But the plot takes like a really strange turn where you're now following these kids. The kids, you know, this is the kids that you saw on the staircase when the Dr. Owen, who's now a priest in the survival, you know, the last survival soldier who was, I think it's Jacka, who we will see again in the fourth film. So that's another thing. It does have like consistency with the characters, and I like the fact that the same actors that are playing them.
And I hated these kids, by the way.
I hated them. I couldn't fucking wait for them to die. But anyway, the next thing you know, it turns around the plot, and they're like just snooping around the building. They bump into the zombies and all that. The next thing you know, boom, they bump into the soldiers and the priests, and they're like, you need to keep away from the windows, and they're begging the people outside to let them out in one of these apartments. Next thing you know, the police are shooting at them. Like they're getting sniped down by the soldiers outside who give the code number, and they're getting shot about and they survive that. And next thing you know, the kid who started it all, who wanted to go in the building, he's bitten by a zombie. And he now, next thing you know, he's converted into a zombie. And then this is where things take another turn, because
didn't the girl accidentally shoot one of the cops at this point?
I think she did.
Yeah,
Loads of shit went down.
They hear like a kid's voice in the room where they lock the one guy in with the rosary, and then he comes out and he's attacking one of the other officers, and he's like, shoot her, and rather than doing the smart thing and walking up and shooting the guy point blank, he aims from a distance and shoots the uninfected guy.
Yeah. And then he is eventually killed, and then he is then the young kid's turned into one of the infected demonified zombies. But the great thing I like about this one is that you've mentioned it there, Anthony, how they were following the voice of a young child. They were being manipulated, and they were being manipulated who I think they were being manipulated, obviously, yes, by the man in the room voiced in the child, the one where they had the door shut with the knife in the door with a cross on from that soldier. But even though he's like doing it, basically he's like a soldier to the main demon, which is the original body. Yeah, they should have focused and like made more emphasis of like the main demon.
And like I do love the aspect that like every individual infected person is literally eyes and ears for this demon.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was getting to. Like they're all like linked. So you say you are a demon, but you're not the main demon. Because you're linked to the main demon, you can be like the demon's advocate. So they can talk through you to me and, let me know what the hell's going on, kind of thing. And that's basically what happened. They were manipulated to go into that room to be attacked. And then they were eventually saved. But then, like I say, we'll figure this all out when the young boy is, like, the young teenager has been bitten. And he's now infected, and they pin him down, and they now start communicating to the main demon through him. And finally it's revealed that he's upstairs. He's well, it's not him, it's a her. The main demon is a female who basically was in the original possessed girl who was getting exorcised many years ago in Spain, whose body was then taken away and disappeared by this vigilante priest, and now is insisting that that body and that woman or that girl is still in the penthouse from the first film. But then they had already been to the penthouse and they found no evidence anywhere of that girl being there. And the reason as well that we forgot to mention that they needed to go up to the original penthouse, they were looking for vials of her blood. Because I think if they could find the original host of the demon, his body or part of the original host DNA and blood, they could find a cure to rid them of this demonic virus.
They do find a vial, but like that goes south because of the priest being basically stupid. He does this test where he pours some out and pulls out a cross and it catches on fire, but unfortunately, so does the blood in the vial. It's like, shouldn't you have at least, as a precaution, told the guy holding the vial, stand over there out of the way?
Or anything, like even it was like even the worst place to decide to do his test. It's like, I know he's in a hurry to try to find the cure, but it's still a volatile area. I would have made sure we're in a room that we can protect, that nothing can come in, and then I would say, "Hey, you guys stay by the door. I'm going to test this real quick, and then we'll go from there." But he's like, "Rush!" He's like, "I got to test this shit," and then of course, yeah,
the vial was like right over here, and he's testing it like right over here. Like the guy holding it, it just catches on fire in his hand, so he just throws it on the ground like anyone would.
Yeah.
That bit was dumb. Even now that you've mentioned it, I'm giggling to myself thinking, what a dick.
And also, when he poured the blood out, this is the only sample you have. It's valuable. Did you have to pour half of it to test it? Could you not have just poured a few drops?
Couple of drops,
yeah. Yeah.
But this is the bit I like about the film, because after the boy's been possessed, and the girl, and it goes south with all of them, and they all meet the tragic end one by one. It's basically the next scene we get is the reveal that the reporter from the first movie is still alive. One's Akanyara cat.
Yeah, so she's still alive, and again, this is where we're kind of like, how the fuck did she survive? But
right, I've got my little demon in the room.
There you go, cat demon.
Yeah,
he hasn't brought any other demons into the room since that one night, has he?
No. Have you, you little
He's
shit?
like, here's my minion. I gotta go.
Yes. But I've lost my train of thought. So where was I? How I forgot. Anthony, remind me again.
When it was when Angela showed up.
Yeah, so remind me again how this scene happened again. So
it was,
they were gonna kill the kid, weren't they?
Yeah, but then I think they're interrogating him, and that's when he shows up.
Yes, and then there's like a scuffle with the gun, and he's insisting after they find out off the young kid that the original host, his body is still up in the penthouse.
Keep in mind, we said the body was still up in the penthouse.
Yes, the original hoster's body apparently is still up in the penthouse. And then it's revealed that the host, that he wants to kill the kid who's now passed on this information. And Jacka doesn't want to kill the kid because he didn't want to kill the little girl. And then he doesn't want this kid. And there's kind of a bit of a scuffle about that. And then I think there's, there's a scuffle on the floor, the stuff goes on. Next thing you know, you see like a light that you think's like a light from the corridor, and there's like an outline of a figure.
Is it just me, or in hindsight, again, we're still got 2 movies to go through, but in hindsight, when we think about the purpose of the demon and what it wants to accomplish, we've watched how our people in these first 2 movies interact with children and what happens. We also know through stuff in the next couple of films that the host that is holding the demon itself, the original host, we know that this creature is immune to anything. So wouldn't it have been like smart for this demon to like take on a child? Because we know that no one's going to kill a child.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been like the smarter way to go?
Yeah.
And like you said, you've got that now. The down in the warehouse, you've got the sewer drain lifted up. The child could have easily climbed down the stairs, got onto the front street, and kept walking, and no one would have bat an eyelid.
Right. I mean, again, it's all hindsight. I know it doesn't really work with.
I've watched the second one. I have got a couple of issues which I'll tell you. So, for example, we'll get this light, and you'll get like this outline of somebody walking towards him after there's like this scuffle and like a gun's being dropped. And it turns out to be the reporter who miraculously is standing in front of them with not a bite mark on her neck. She's not been zombified, but the last time we seen her, she was in the pitch black dark getting dragged away. So straight away, yeah, red flag straight away. You've got a question mark. What the hell? And how did she survive?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's also what I talked about, how the way that she showed up as opposed to how the director probably should have discovered her was like maybe passed out. Because when we do find out, it kind of like the way she shows up, you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, something's not right. There's no way she should be alive. So you're kind of already thinking in your head, like, she's not really who she seems to be.
And even checks it over and she seems fine. And it's like, they got no memory of what's going on. She's like, can you save me? I want to get out. I want, you know, straight away, if you've got, if you've got, amnesia, or, you've got memory loss and you've been through traumatic, you know that something might not be quite right. And this is where it leads after the kids are killed, and she and the priest and Jacka end up going up to the base, going up to the penthouse again, where apparently nothing's there, but the demons led them there. Because when they were interrogating the boy who's possessed, he says, I'm above you. I'm above you. He kept on being quite vulgar and mentioned the C word and said, I'm inside your mother's you-know-what, hoo-haw. Which I thought took me straight back to The Exorcist. They definitely were inspired by that particular film. With that,
and of course, saying that it's up there, it's like, if anyone knows demons, they lie all the time. So I'm like, yeah, you're lying to me. It's not up there.
Well, it technically wasn't lying, because they asked, where's the original body, and it did answer truthfully.
Yeah, that's true.
Above them. And then this is where the film this is what I like as well. The film takes even another unexpected turn, because in the first movie, when it was her and the original cameraman, she had to put the night vision on, and all you see is them walking around the apartment in the pitch black, and they do go through just doors. They're just walking around different doors, and you just think, oh, they're in the pitch, but they're going through different doors in this big penthouse. But when they went up to the apartment, they had the lights on, and the apartment did seem different.
There's a door that only reveals itself when the lights are off, which I want to know some explanation as to how was this constructed.
Yeah.
There's no reveal really. You just have to accept it. For me, this felt like it come from Silent Hill or Insidious. Like in Insidious, you've got the red door where they go into the further, which is a part of that front. So this is definitely could have influenced Insidious in some way with this concept. Oh, I don't know what year Insidious come out, but it's very, very similar vibes. How they go up to the apartment and then he's basically saying to her, "Where's the door? How did you find it?" And all, and she went, "It was just there. The door was just over there." And then suddenly they turn the lights off and put the night vision on, and the apartment suddenly looks bigger, and they see this door. They walk through the door, and there's like I think it was like a well at the back of this big room, like in the other soldier goes over to the well, and he sticks, you know straight away shit's gonna go down. So he sticks his head over the well and has a look, and what happens? He gets dragged into the water. So what did they do? Instead of trying to running over and saving them, they switch the lights on and he disappears.
Yeah.
They basically killed him.
Yeah. He's gone. Don't worry about him. He's toast.
Yeah, and then the next thing, they switch the lights back off, and there's water scattered all around them, and they can hear noises. And then you do eventually see the original body of the woman walking around. And some of these scenes are proper creepy and grotesque. She does look phenomenal. The actress that's all up in the get up, and it turns out she can only find you via sound, which I found was another stupid thing. You're a fucking demon, and you can. It's like you're blind, but you can find us if you have got your white stick and you tap around the room. Is that what you're telling us? I found that really weird, but in the end, the priest unfortunately fails at his job. Jack, who was knocked unconscious, he's hit over the head with I think a hammer.
Yeah.
And I forgot who shoots her in the head, but you get being very quiet, and then there's a scuffle, and then she gets shot in the head, and you just think, right, the demon's being killed. The priest is absolutely irate because he goes, "You've killed her. We can't stop this virus."
Why couldn't he have just used the blood from the corpse?
Yep.
Like it was freshly dead, so that at that very second, cellular degradation would have been negligent at best.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, it takes another unexpected turn, because suddenly the reporter turns bad. She knocks the priest over. She's laying on top of him. And it's finally revealed that all of this has been one big mind game by the demon, and that now she is in the body of the reporter.
And how creepy was her body language at this point?
Oh.
It legit felt like a completely different person.
Yes. And it's suddenly revealed that, like I say, playing mind games, you're saying, let them know we're coming out, let them know I've survived, and the priest won't. And then she finally turns to him and says something along the lines like, I don't need you. I can always get out. And then she kills the police, and then she picks up the radio to let the authorities know outside that she's the only survivor. And how she does it, she manipulates them by changing her voice into his voice, which goes back to something that really irritates me. So all this time, the demons have just been playing fucking mind games and all this. You could have done one of those policemen from the very first movie, could have been, or the doctor who had got bitten, who was, the one that came in to check in on the uninfected and then was eventually infected. They could have easily done it where he was infected, pretended he was okay, walked out the building and said, everyone's fine, there's no infection, and let everybody walk out. And then then before it's too late, they would have just turned off then the people outside into demons, and then it would have just spread like wildfire.
I probably would have infected a little girl, Jennifer, been immune, and then as I would just, because she has control of the demons that she's infected, I would just have them start trying to crash through windows and stuff to distract the police, and then go out that little tunnel way and just say, skip
Me and Tony just did a review of The Bondsman with Kevin Bacon, which is like a demon show where he's a bondsman, he gets killed, and he comes back from hell, and he's now a bondsman to hunt demons and send them back to hell. And there's one episode where there's a little boy who gets possessed by a demon, and the female character, she's basically got to shoot the demon, but she cannot bring herself to do it.
Right.
And all hell breaks loose. So they needed to do something like that in this, where, like they did kind of do it where the Jacker couldn't bring himself to shoot Jennifer, so the priest ended up doing it. So they did play on it. But I agree with you. They should have done it would have been creepier to have a demon possessed kid that was running the show. But what ends up happening, and after this is revealed, and the reporters now basically said, right, I'm now free, I'm going to be getting out the building. It then flips backward to the events of the first movie where she was lying on the floor and gets dragged away. It then shows you her sitting on the floor, and you see this creepy hand go around her throat, and you see the original body of the creepy woman basically open her mouth and put like this giant slug type snake into her down her throat. She closes her eyes, and then she suddenly awakens, which then leads you to the events that happened in the second half of this film, and then the screen goes to black.
Yep.
So once again, left on a huge cliffhanger. I still mind I'm enjoying these movies more than some of the franchises that were viewed.
Oh yeah,
Some of the
sequels. If we're going to talk as a collective, this franchise is stronger than most.
Yeah. It's like what I said before. Like for Wishmaster, still love the first one. I can get away with the second one. Then the other two kind of fall off. The same with Pumpkinhead. I like the first and the second one. Then the other two fall away. We've done, there's lots of franchises that do, but I think it's because of budget and all that and what the studio believe. But now we're going to the next one, which of course is this one. Genesis.
This is my girl, Clara.
So, I'm going to let you two take the reins on this one, and I'll let you know what I think. So, Anubis, take it away.
If I had the power to remove Kevin, I would. But anyway. Actually, I have no idea what he's going to say, so it'll be interesting. So basically, Rec 3, Genesis, it's much different than the other three films in the series, obviously. We start with these two people, Coldo and Claire, who are getting ready to get married. Big old Spanish, Italian, not Italian, but Spanish wedding.
Mm-hmm.
the occasion they're all at the church. It's like a lot of people, a lot of family. Yeah. And I forget who the one
Raffi.
guy, it's the uncle. Yeah. So he's been bitten by the
Oh,
dog.
not the uncle. Raffi's the best friend who went missing.
Oh,
was
okay.
one of
Yeah. Who is the uncle
It
that
was
we
the uncle. He worked at the vet where the dog got dropped off at, and he got bit.
Yep. So, he's approached by Koldo and, they're checking. He's like, "Are you okay, man?" Like, he sees the bandaged hand and it's like, "Yeah, man, do I look good? I'm happy. I'm smiling." And like, there's a bunch of people and a lot of cute girls, a lot of guests. And like, this is a big deal, like a really big deal.
If you look carefully, like you will see people that are out of place in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But so they go through their wedding vows, and there's a nice dude. One of the best men are like singing a song, and it's really nice. And then they go to the reception, and this is where shit starts to get crazy. Now, the dance scene, I thought the dance between Clara and Koldo was pretty good. Like, I can't even dance like that.
Before you get there, I do want to touch up on one nice moment because it does start out found footage style. And
Yeah.
you have this one guy recording with the amateur camera, and he meets up the professional guy, and you're like, we've seen this played out before. The professional guy's going to be a jerk, but it's like, okay, so that's what you're shooting in. Well, this is, and it's more like, I may have better equipment, but I can still admire your craft. So, that was a nice touch.
Well, the one thing I'll add, so I'll just put, so Rec 3, it came out in 2012. It was both directed and co-written by Paco Plaza, who was the co-writer and director of the first two. He takes solo reins of the third movie. And I think you said that was for a reason, did you, Anthony? Because the two had different ideas and the direction they wanted to take the franchise.
It wasn't to the point where they had a falling out, but one of them wanted to focus more on the possession aspect, and the other wanted to focus more on the scientific aspect. So they're like, how about you take one film and focus on what you want to focus on, and then I'll take the other film and focus on what I want to focus on, because it would be better than just making something we can't agree on.
Yeah, and you can argue that's what makes this series problematic, because that's always been the inconsistency throughout it.
You know what this reminds me of? Because of that, it reminds me of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. You had, Disney give the reins of the three movies to three separate directors who had their own different ideas and versions of where they wanted to take the story. So after A Force Awakens, Rian Johnson then got to do, The Last Jedi, and he had to basically take what he made and make it work for his story. And then obviously the next film was a total and absolute disaster. The third one, Rise of Skywalker, and that wasn't just because of having a different director with different ideas. It was also due to there was some untimely deaths, like Carrie Fisher and stuff. That was all leading to her to have a bigger part in that particular film, which they had to change a lot. So that not have constant, consistency in plot or direction, it really, I think, is detrimental to a film franchise. And I still feel like that's with the Monsterverse as well, in many ways, shapes, and forms. But another thing I'll mention is that this film, we mentioned in the first movie how Max was Jennifer's dog, the young girl, and the dog got unwell, was taken to the vets. They must have assumed it had rabies. It went a bit crazy and attacked people. One of them, like you say, must have been the uncle in this movie, because the events of Rec 3 Genesis takes place at the exact same time as the events in the first film, which you'll see later on, because I mentioned how as the plot progresses, the groom, he's in the control room and he's, watching on the monitors, but behind him above the door there's a television screen, and it's showing the breakout in the on the news how a building in central Spain's being quarantined due to some sort of containment. So
Sure.
Anubis, carry on.
Yeah, you notice how you had to stop us, Anthony, because we were gushing too much. Just kidding. Yeah, so the reception's going on. There's a lot of dancing going on, celebrating. But when we start noticing that the uncle is like vomiting blood, which is a problem, I'd be very concerned at this point for his health, not just mine, but his.
It's not just a little bit of blood either. It's like a just
right.
And we need to remember this film as well. The first, I would say, 10-15 minutes, it's found footage done through the once you get past the bits you're talking about, it then turns into a full-fledged film.
I love the moment when it turns into a traditional film.
Yeah, they kind of drop away from the found footage and it turns into a full-fledged feature film.
I think was smart. Like, I think both of them did realize that, like, they played up the found footage aspect as much as they could get away with.
Yeah, I agree.
And for those that don't know, the rec itself is abbreviation for record. That's what it's supposed to represent. Yeah. But yeah, so Uncle starts freaking out. He attacks a woman after he's like smiling on the railing, and he's like, "Hey, look at me!" And then he falls back onto the table, and they're like, "Oh shit, is he drunk?"
And so they went and look. He attacks.
Yeah, she's checking out on it, and he bites her, and then that's when everyone just starts like scattering. And as we pointed out in the other two films, depending on, I guess, how you are when you're infected is how fastly you change into whatever it is. Some do it like this. Other ones take a little bit longer time.
There needed to be more of a consistency.
Yeah, and or at least a better explanation of how that would work. And that's, again, the problem with some of this franchises. Like, we'll talk about after the fourth one, like where they need like an origin story. They just need one.
Like this, it could have just been explained, because it seems to be very rare that it takes hours for someone to infect. So just if you have O or AB type blood, then it's going to take a lot longer. So that would explain why you see only a handful of people take that long.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah, so the reception, clearly everything starts going crazy, and like somebody takes Clara and runs off one direction, but Coldo and some of the boys, along with our professional recorder, are going in another direction. Or actually, I think they meet him in the kitchen or something. But either way, everyone's going crazy, and the virus is spreading very fast. Blood's getting shot everywhere. And the other funny thing was, leading up to the uncle like losing his shit, we see like cop cars outside of the building at which they're doing the reception and everything. Like, you see people in hazmat suits like we saw in the first film. So I'm kind of wondering how they even knew what was going on here as well, unless they were following the uncle, like unless that was their lead.
Yeah, the way I kind of piece it together, they were at the thing, and then they found in this employee got bit, so they went to track him down, and by the time they found him, he was already at the wedding. Why didn't you just send like full SWAT team in after him?
Right. But yeah, so the reception's going crazy, and Clara and Coldo get separated, and at one point, Coldo and them are barricading themselves within the kitchen there, and we get this little interaction between them and the professional filmer and another guy. I forget who the guy was. They're like, he's not part of our family.
But he does the one thing you always think, why doesn't it happen in these movies? He just like takes the camera from them and throws it.
Yeah. Like, that's one thing Cole does. Like, why are you filming this? And he's like, people need to know. I'm like, we don't even know what's going on. How do you know what's going on? I was like, just no.
We need to survive more than they need to know.
Right. Like I'd be like, just leave it on the counter, let it record, but we gotta go. So but yeah, then the funnier thing happens is when they have to try to get out of that kitchen because they're starting to come through it, like they're very strong. And so they find like a ventilation system that they're going to go down in. But of course, our dude, who's a professional cameraman, is a big guy. He's not fitting down there and he knows it. So
Before
he's
that,
kind of like,
I had the little screwdriver, and there was a vent that went into some underground tunnels, and the other guy like rushes him and he drops it, and I'm like, you idiots are in a kitchen full of knives. I guarantee you a butter knife could have done the job.
right. Yeah. If you knew what you were doing. So yeah, they get moving and the rest of them get through there. The other guy gets left behind. We kind of lose track of him for a while. And then I'm trying to remember because they end up having to get back outside and they're kind of seeing some of the chaos going on while they're trying to evade it, everybody that's being infected. And then they get to a chapel, which is pretty interesting. So this again, here comes our tie-in with the religious aspect of what these are. They get into the chapel, close it off, but the rest of the infected are trying to get in, stop. They can't go beyond that because it's religious. And they're in there, and there's a priest, and this priest, probably one of the worst priests on the planet. He's just already given in. He's like, yeah, it's the end of the days, man. You just ought to accept it. We're just going to die. This is what it's going to be. Me and Lighter are like slapping him. Come on, let's go. Get your shit together, man. We need a good priest here. I don't know. What did you think about all this, Anthony, at this point?
I was having fun with it. Like, yeah, there are some inconsistencies, but I enjoyed it, especially the trek to the chapel, because they find this car and they go into radio, and then the one in the car comes to and bites the guy, and then when they're in the chapel, we hear the wife over the intercom, and he's like, I have to find my wife. And that's when they look and they see there are all these artifacts, including old body armor in the chapel.
Yeah, yeah, they put all the armor suits and shit and the swords. I thought that was funny as fuck. The thing about this film is one reason why I like it is because despite being different than the other three, it reminds me a lot of Evil Dead. I love the whole concept and the badassery. And actually, it kind of goes back to something Kevin said about Silent Hill. So you kind of got a little bit of that going on in here. But
Nope.
all right, go ahead. Let's hear your shit. Come on, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Just don't like it
At all. You don't like anything about it.
The wife and the husband, I would have killed them myself. They were so annoying. They were just so annoying. I just couldn't get away with it. They tried to turn into the female Ash, which really pissed me off. Yes, she's sexy. Yes, she's good. And, but then, this scene, fair enough, great, looks amazing. I just didn't like the story, and I just couldn't gel to it. I love the first 15 minutes with the found footage, and when it turned into the feature film, and then you've got him wanting to rescue his wife. The best mates went away with one of the girls, and he's basically, she comes across and thinking it's a demon on the floor. Well, he's not. He's basically eating her out behind the chair, and then you've then got the priest who's now I like those elements where it's, they had revealed this demonic virus. You had the priest, and he was able to stop the priest by doing prayers and all that. Now, them bits I found strange, because I thought if they are against God because they are demons of hell or something, if he's doing prayers from God, I would have assumed they would have been angered by that and would have been hell-bent to kill him.
It is biblical, though, because it even says biblically, even the devil trembles at the mention of his name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're talking about when the demons are actually confronting the priest?
Yeah, so when the priest, when they ran up the stairs to get away from them, and you see, it's her and the priest, and he looks like he's about to get killed on the staircase inside
Yeah.
the building, and he starts rambling and like saying out a prayer,
Well,
and
the problem
then
is though is that
they're suddenly hypnotized by it, and he basically just gets to walk by.
well, but that's consistent though with the other stuff in the films. Like whenever a priest pulls out like a rosary with a cross, they stop. They don't come after him. Now, if we're gonna argue like The Exorcist, where if you don't really believe in your faith and you try to quote scripture, the demon's gonna laugh at you and tell you fuck off, that doesn't do anything to me. But
Like,
this isn't the case in these films.
Like I don't mind, I don't really mind the priest stuff because, like you say, it is consistent. I just couldn't get away with the lead or the wife. I couldn't. The groom and the bride. I just didn't like them.
You just don't like the characters.
And I didn't like the dialogue that I watched where she kept going, my love, I love you, my love. I felt like, am I watching a fucking romantic comedy or am I watching a gory horror?
It's what I want. It's what I want.
I thought, what a load of heap of shit. I just didn't like. I just thought from when you. And I was like,
right.
I can easily watch the first two and go straight into the fourth one.
Well, you could, because that's where it's kind of more consistent with the main actress. So
I've
already said this film is vastly different than the other three, which technically you could literally watch this as a standalone and not be worried about anything else. You could totally do that.
I felt like this, they tried to make it more comical, and it didn't work for me. There's just something about it. I just didn't. I felt like I was watching a spin-off from Shaun of the Dead.
That's what I'm saying. It's got the whole Evil Dead thing, so it's certainly influenced a lot by horror comedy. The other three films are not.
Like, there is one thing I found as well. Another part about this one is where he was looking looking and seeing like the reflections in the monitor, and you're seeing the old original body. So I like those elements because those are consistent to the first two. Like it's like you are looking through into the other realm. Like you see, when they were in the penthouse and they turned the lights off, the door was visible. If you turn the lights back on, the door wasn't there. So it's like when he's looking in the monitor and you can see like the female of the original host, the demonic original host. That's consistent. So I like those elements. They're the positives. For me, the negatives are the group.
You didn't like Sponge John?
But I just couldn't get away with the story.
There was even a copyright lawyer at the wedding.
Yeah.
I would say that even though I like the way the directors split off, one criticism I will give is they should have at least agreed, even though we're going to do our own thing, you don't have to focus on these aspects, but they still at least need to be addressed in our individual movies.
Yeah.
Like you see, the other positives, it does link to the original, like the uncle being bitten by a dog in the veterinary surgery. Makes total sense. And it gives it kind of makes the world seem a lot bigger in this, because obviously the first two are set in the same place, where they're now taken out. It's a bit like Evil Dead, like you said. The first, like every Evil Dead film up to Rise was based in the woods.
Yeah.
It would in a cabin, where they finally took it beyond that into like this apartment building in Rise, but then they still linked it back. You see the beginning of Rise in Evil Dead, and then it goes right at the end of the movie. It goes back to the cabin in the woods, so it still has them links and consistencies that way. And this does as well. I say, my only I just couldn't get behind the story with the bride and the groom. I would have ate them myself.
See, the only thing I will say in regards to that, and I don't know if Anthony feels the same way or not, because we probably approach it a little bit differently, but a lot of what happens after the reception is more cat and mouse. It's the typical like we're running away, trying to survive, trying to find our lover. Now, what stuck with me so much about this film is the ending, because now I thought maybe I saw an alternate version of this film, because I could have swore that they weren't infected before they were shot. But as I watched this, and I don't know, maybe Anthony knows something more to me on that, but I don't think there's another version of this. So
it really goes.
I liked how she
really,
gets
like-
infected as well. I liked how she got infected. Like the priest up in the control room, using the speaker systems to like do his prayers across the whole of the grounds of where the wedding receptions had, and then. But you do see a scene earlier on where his grandfather is deaf and he has hearing aids and he struggles to hear things and he just says yes and agrees to things even though he doesn't know what. So I like the fact that how she was infected because she bumps into the grandfather who's obviously a zombie. And because his hearing aids aren't working and he cannot hear what the priest's saying, he ends up attacking her. And I thought that was brilliant.
yeah,
So I'm not like bashing the film completely. It's just them two main characters, and I just couldn't get behind them, and I just didn't like them as a whole. But there are some things I do like about it, and like that for me, I thought was really smart.
Mm-hmm.
Like that you mentioned with that there, that even though there is a supernatural aspect, and I'll get more into this when we get to the fourth film, and it's the one negative I can lobby at both of these, but that the demonic influence is still to a degree limited by the limitations of the body. If it infects someone blind, it's still going to be blind. If it infects someone deaf, it's still going to be deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again, when we get to the ending with these two, like he knows that it's he cuts off her arm. They do the typical, hey, we're gonna stop the infection. And it's like, if you ever watch a zombie film, it's not gonna work. You're putting it through unnecessary pain right now. So they cut her arm off, hoping that it won't infect the rest of the body, and then they go and they realize, well, it's not going to stop it. So, but instead of like saying, hey, I'm just going to leave you behind, picks her up like a groom would, walks her out. Of course, they know that's pretty much a death sentence for them. And they had to share the kiss in which she turns, bites his tongue off, which is, I don't know if that's the way I'd want to go, but hey, it's how it goes. To get shot, and then you get that final shot where they're holding hands while they pass away, which they weren't shot in the head, from what I can tell. So, are they still alive?
Well, I'm sure.
They were shot multiple times in the body.
Yeah, but if it's headshots that matter,
yeah, but once they're on the ground, then you walk up and point blank.
Yeah,
but they don't show that. That's what I'm saying. It's like we don't even know.
But you don't see it, so you don't know.
Yeah,
so you don't
it
know.
doesn't say anything about that infection spreading in the fourth movie,
right?
But what I do love about like the way they went out, it goes back to the wedding vows, and I think had both of them survived, it would not have worked. Had one lived and the other died, it would not have worked. But for them to both go out together like that is what really makes the ending for me.
Yeah, because normally you would probably say, well, he's probably just going to put a bullet in her head and spare her the pain of being a zombie or whatever. So instead, they're like, he knows that he was pretty much living for her. The rest of the family's gone and dead. So it's like, why not just go out? The world's fucked.
Yeah, like both of their
like the ending is spectacular with the deaths.
Was it both of their
that's one thing I see. The ending with them.
Had he survived, what would he have had? A lifetime of trauma?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely.
I did find it weird as well. Like there was one survivor of the whole thing, and it was the old lady who I can't even remember if you saw her in this film, the same actress.
No, I don't know, but obviously she plays a part in the fourth one. Yeah.
So yes, so use guys like this. I like it a tad, but I just find the lead. I just didn't like the story with the groom in the. But I can see, they've tried doing a different direction with it. Like they've done it with many franchises. Like, for example, the MCU. People complain that Thor Dark World was too dark and too gloomy, and then they totally went in a new direction with Ragnarok, and then they totally fucked it up with Love and Thunder. So, you try it, you see if it works. If it works, you stick. If you don't, you can go back to formula. And that's what they technically did with the fourth film.
I love that poster.
Apocalypse. Yes.
She's
Brilliant poster. Well, that's one thing we can both agree on, that the one thing that the Rec franchise does brilliantly at, that they have hired hot women in the cast. Like the female lead, despite the characters in the third one, was fucking stunning. Like the poster with her on is like, this poster alone is amazing.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the poster. Very well put together. But shall we are the final chapter of Rec? So, like I say, I watched this a few weeks ago, so you guys will probably have to refresh my mind when it comes to the fourth one. But Rec for Apocalypse, it's known as, is a 2014 Spanish action horror film and the fourth and final installment of the Rec film series. The film is a direct sequel to Rec 2 and takes place immediately after the events of the second film. Jamia Balguero is the director of the first two, returns to direct this one, and Manuela Valesco also returns to be the lead. And the film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it only made 4.9 million at the box office.
Yeah, it's the one that's done the least amount of profit.
That's not surprising.
That is surprising.
So basically, this film, like you say, takes directly after the events of the second one, where she, you see her reveal who she is. The next thing you know, the reporter Angela is now on, she's unconscious. She's kind of tied up in some facility. You also see the same. You see this gentleman back in this one, he's also made it. That is, I think that's Jacka. So Jacka was the final man that survived the events in the apartment alongside her.
I do gotta say, in the beginning when she's tied up, I find it hilarious that she's there in full restraints, no makeup, yet her hair is still perfect somehow.
Yeah.
The magic of movies.
All right.
But what ends up happening is she's tied up, he awakens, and he has no idea where he is or what's going on. The same with her. You're then also introduced to this older lady who doesn't even know what the hell's went on, and she was at her stepdaughter's wedding, apparently. So she must be the groom's grandmother, I'm assuming. Because it was a step granddaughter's wedding or something of them lines. So that's the connection from the third one to the fourth one, having this lady. Like, it would have been interesting if they hadn't killed the groom, and yes, he's going through trauma, but he was the survivor and he was involved in this. But they decided to go with the good old and the grandmother. So basically, they have no clue what's going on. The trip, what they believe, is on some sort of facility, like a quarantine facility is what I would have took it. after a huge, infection and all that. He has no idea where he is. You see people walking around, and it's soon revealed that they're on a ship because they did break out. They did try to escape, but there's nowhere to go because they're on a ship. They bump into the chef. He kind of reveals to them, you're on this ship for quarantine reasons, to protect you, to make sure there's no more infection, or this kind of jazz. But also then discover that there is a monkey, because they do an experiment on trying to
That's never been
find
done before.
absolutely, an outbreak. Does anyone remember Outbreak?
That 28 days later started with
20
that.
Yeah, 28 days later. Yes. There's been shitloads of movies where monkeys get infected and cause hell. Let's face it, the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy. It started off with an infection from the apes. So it's not an original idea. It's a new idea. It's a one that's been done millions of times.
But from
But
a scientific standpoint, it does make sense because their body chemistry is similar enough to ours that if you can cure it in an ape, you can pretty much cure it in a person.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be some illegal freaking animals experimentation going on somewhere in the world, or even a government funded one, because or you can just imagine what they do to these poor animals. But yeah, so what happens following the attack? Luca, and Angela are waiting on the ship. She's chained to the bed. They've got no idea what the hell's going on, or they try to escape. He tries to help her. Then they bump into Dr. Riccardi. And Dr. Riccardi, assures that they're not infected, but they need to do these experiments, and it's for their own good and safety. He's like in charge of doing these experiments on the blood and on the animals. Then all of a sudden, there's a power outage. When the power outage happens, the monkey escapes. That's been infected. That's basically, you can tell, it's like a fucking zombified monkey. And who does it attack? It attacks the chef. It attacks the poor chef who, and after he's attacked, all hell breaks loose because he contaminates the food, and half the ship now becomes infected and now becomes zombified. And so basically her, Angela, and Jacka, it's up to them to try and get off the ship and escape the horde of zombies and all of that. The doctor's still doing these experiments, but his experiment turns out to be useless. It's like, and the reason it turns out to be useless because he needs a pure source of blood to continue his experimentations, which, how's he going to do that? Because he would need the original body. So up to this point, Anthony, how do you feel about this particular movie?
I'm really enjoying myself here. Like, it's different than the other three, but I kind of knew that going into it. But I do like it. It kind of there's a good air of mystery over this because up until a certain point in the film, we don't know what happened after the credits roll in the second film. We know Angela was the new host, but now she seems just fine, and somehow this virus is spreading. And well, we know how, but somehow the monkey got out, and we also find out like they got the original camcorder, and they have this tech who's actually a big fan of Angela's working on it, and like we want to know, okay, how soon is he going to fix this? We want to know more about what happened.
Yeah.
And I do like one of the scenes I like is when he gets to meet her and he's like wanting to do a video with her while she's more focused on the camera. But not gonna lie, I've heard this was the weakest one, but I was having a lot of fun here.
I see. Like I'm different to you guys. I think the third's the weakest because it just goes in a different direction, and it's basically just a spin-off. For me, the first three are the main storyline and the main focus. The third one, they just tried to make a fun horror movie with, which I didn't find that fun. Apart from the odd little bits and pieces. What about you, Anubis? How do you find so far the fourth one?
This is the weakest by far. It's only because without Angela, I'd probably take a piss on it and shit on it as well. It's a lot of cliches. It's not that it's necessarily horrible. It fits in nicely with the first two films because you're dealing with the same chick. But they're just throwing everything at the fan here. He's coming back. He's not being original like he was in the first two. He's just kind of going back to cliches about, because like I said, I've seen this before where we have like in Resident Evil or some other movie where they take someone who's supposedly infected and put them on a ship, and then you got the monkey. I do like the people in some ways, but again, we're kind of following the same thing where we've got this doctor who wants to, get the blood from her. Like, too many things are inconsistent about how they treat her. Like, they say, well, she's fine, but if I'm sitting there saying to myself, she's the only one that comes out of this building, I'm putting her in quarantine somewhere, some little room. Say, look, if you're not infected, you're just going to sit here. We're going to feed you. We're going to be good to go. But they don't do that. They let her roam around. And so the other problem I have is there's a point where once they find out that through the video that was being kissed by the angel of death, basically, they throw her forcibly onto a table to try to cut her open. I'm like, whoa, dude. Like, there's better ways to go about this. Like, do you have an X-ray machine? Do you have a way to maybe numb the surgery? They were just going balls out, and I'm like, are you fucking insane?
It's clear they were going to let her bleed out after extracting it, so why not at least shoot her in the head and just put her out of her misery?
Yeah, there's so much going on here. I mean, again, you got to keep the story rolling because otherwise, if you kill her, it's over. It's the whole thing.
So they basically figure out there's zombie hordes all over the ship. They figure out that she has been infected, but she's been affected not just by the virus, but some sort of parasite. So I like the fact that yes, it has the biblical elements to it, but they're also using science and all that. It's a great way of mixing them both together. So she apparently has this giant parasite still in her to control thing, but then it's later revealed it's left her, went into somebody else.
This is So this is where I said there was something I was going to get on later, and why I said they should have at least come together and agreed that certain things need to be addressed, because this infection is just as much demonic as it is scientific, and you cannot separate those two. And the third one completely separated the scientific aspect. In this one completely separates the demonic aspect. And although I love these two films, I feel like that's the weakest link of both of them, separating that.
It's like what was said. It's because you've got two different directors, co-writers who started a story together, but they just couldn't make up how they wanted that story to go. Did they want it to go down the biblical route or the scientific route? So in the end, the split of one did the third one, the next person did this one. But I think this, the director, which is that Jamal Bagheero, I feel must have had more control of the franchise, considering he's had the power to tell the final story. And I say, I like the element. I did like this, how it kept the flip backwards and forwards with the parasite going into different hosts. And obviously, in the end, she's isn't with the host anymore. It's in Jakku, and
Gunsman.
Gunsman, sorry. And then you know, with the doctor as well. The doctor's like turns into like a mad evil scientist.
There's a point where it's like, okay, I understand these protocol, but then when he like sets the ship to detonate, but you find out he has a raft, I'm like, this guy's a rat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that's probably one of the elements I do like is when he's so convinced that she has whatever's inside her that she bites him and says,
Yeah, that was great.
Let me know if you turn into one of these things, because then that will prove that I'm not. And then he's like, well, I can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. It's got to be her. And it's like, well, you're the guy with science. If it's all about data, you're not becoming what she says you're becoming, so she doesn't have it.
I love how smart she was about it, because she basically creates a diversion to grab him, then she bites down on him, and then she, at this point, she has the guy in the one guy helping her with the cameras, and she even had to like reconvince him that no, I did this just to prove it to him.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely.
I will say though, the whole who's infected it with the parasite, it does kind of put you in mind of the Thing.
Yeah. It does. I had those vibes of this. So it's like what Anubis said. I know he's not like I'm not as fond on the third one. He's not as fond of him because because of all the cliches and not being as original. But I still find this enjoyable, and I laughed at the end where, you know, they've got all the zombie hordes on the ship, and there's like, you know, they jump into the ocean. And then the parasite in the ocean, and it, you know, they're trying to stop it, you know, and then it gets swallowed by a fucking fish.
I could have done
so that means because it's been swallowed by a fish, that parasite could be anywhere.
Yeah, it could bite anybody. It could be eaten by somebody.
I know what the next, if they ever reboot Jaws, I know how they're gonna do it.
But yeah,
all it'll take is for a fucking great white to bite that and eat that fish, and then the parasite's going to be inside of a shell.
They really need like an origin story, so this guy needs to come back and at least give me some data of where this thing came from and why. Like, I need to know.
That scene with the fish, I think if they had taken that out, the movie would have been all the stronger for it.
Agreed.
Yes. They should have done like what it sounds weird. They should have just done something and made it more scientific, where, you know, like in Alien versus Predator, the alien queen gets tied and gets knocked into cold water. So because it hits cold water, it can't survive in cold temperature. So, you know, the alien queen's going to drown and she's going to freeze to death and die. They should have just done something like when the parasite was released into the water, the parasite should have just floated to the bottom and froze to death and died. And then there's no way for that. And because it's holding from the original host, then of course it can't go into anybody else. It'll just freeze away. It'll just rot and die.
Of course, devil's advocate, and that's kind of the problem with leaving it this open-ended, is what if it's something where the parasite is dependent on the human body to survive? It is going into that much of a scientific aspect.
They could have even did something where when it hit the bottom of the ocean, they could have ended it where obviously they get out of the cabs and they go home, and, you know, their story in this world's ended. They can run off and live happy life. They could have ended it where you see the parasite at the bottom of the ocean and it like springs alive and grows like its own set of legs, and it starts like scumming across the ocean floor, something of that nature. And it would have left it open to say, right, the parasite's still out there somewhere, and it's walking on the bottom. Then all it needs to do is be captured by a fishing boat, brought up in with the fish, and as someone sleeping on the boat, climb into his mouth. They could always have done that and then start a new set of films, a continuation years down the line. But they haven't done that. They did it with the fish, and the fish thing just took me out of it at the end. It's the weakest part of the movie.
Yeah. Yep.
But in all, I still enjoyed it, and I still, like you say, because you've got this divide with biblical and science. For me, there's lots of questions we ask, and it opens your mind to different ideas and possibilities.
Yeah.
So, with that said, as always, what's your final thought in all on the Wreck franchise? We'll start with DJ Anubis.
As a franchise, it's very strong. Like compared to some of the franchises we've done, all these movies are enjoyable on some level. Like doesn't matter where you rate them or rank them. The reality is, the directors were very consistent with how they approached it. Like they didn't shortcut or they didn't, get too lazy with it. Like even though the fourth one has a lot of your normal cliches, it's still strongly put together. And credit to Velasco, who really carries the films that she's in. Like she's just that much of a presence on these films. So I really, really like her.
Can I ask a question? Have you seen her in anything else outside of the Wreck series?
I'd have to look. I don't think so because I don't know what all she's done.
I wasn't sure if this would have propelled her in like becoming like a horror iconic scream queen actress and did more horror movies outside of Wreck.
Yeah, I mean she does like a lot of Spanish films, so like I don't unless they're like, unless I know like the English titles. But I don't think. But she has done some other films. I just don't know what they are.
I don't think they were a horror.
No.
But she's very talented, nevertheless.
Yes, very, very talented. What's your overall opinion, Daniel? Anthony?
Daniel.
I really enjoyed them. Why I think certain ones are better than others. I think it's just by like a very narrow margin how much better certain ones are than others. Like I liked it so much I plan on getting the Shout Factory set of the 4 of them.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So let's get on to rating them. So I'm the host, so I'm gonna fucking start. It's very simple. It's gonna be 2, 1, 4, and 3 in that order. That's how I from my best to my worst. So 2 is number 1 for me. It's my favourite. Then the first one is my second favourite. The fourth one is my third favourite. Despite having issues, and the third one, them 2 fuckers can stay dead. I'm sorry. Goodbye to the bride and groom. So, Mr. Anthony Jordan, what is your rankings?
I'm really torn on what to do between. My favorite would be third one right now. Then flip a coin. Second favorite, the first one, then the fourth one, and last, just because of those idiot kids, would be the second one.
Anubis.
So coming in at number 4 would be Rec 4, which I rate 4 out of 10. It's still enjoyable, just a little bit too samey. It's probably the weakest of the bunch. Then I have Rec 2 at number 3 at 6 out of 10. Decent, but too much like the first one. And then the second one will be Rec 1 with 8 out of 10. And then Rec 3 is my top one at 9 out of 10.
Fucking idiots. How that? What? I can't. Oh, never mind. You can like
I
what you
I can't help it that Anthony and I have taste. What can I say?
Taste. My God. If that's what you call taste, I don't want to know what I don't think is taste. Anyway, we're all like what we're like, and it is what it is. But I do find it quite interesting that we've all got different, like with our rankings, we weren't all the same. Like I know when we've done previous franchise discussion, we've pretty much all nearly been on par, maybe by except one or two of the films. But the fact that I've got my rankings and yous have got yours, and even Anthony's is slightly different to yours, I think it's quite. This has been such a compelling franchise to talk about. It's not like an obvious one where you can pick who's the
and
best.
like I said, this is a very strong franchise. I'd recommend people watch the entire one because it's all consistent, it's all fun. It's really well acted. Like there's really like you can rank them however you want to as whoever watches this video, but the reality is it's a very strong franchise. When you think about franchises, we think about like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. They're not always strong. So it's like this one is actually a strong franchise from start to finish.
Here's what I was looking up what else Manuel Velasco has done out of curiosity. It turns out, in addition to being an actual reporter / actress, she has one soundtrack to her credit.
Oh, wow.
Cool. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you for talking all things Rec with me on Into the Darkness on the Entertainment Headquarters. I love doing the franchise discussions, especially the horror ones, because there's a lot of great horror shit out there, and we've got more coming for you guys in the future. In fact, our good friend here, Mr. Anthony Jordan, we are going to be doing a creature feature for his birthday, and we're going to be talking about the first 4 entries in the Tremor franchise.
This couldn't have been timed more perfectly, because last week the news just broke that the original writers have the rights back, and it looks like we'll be getting a new project, Tremors project, with Kevin Bacon attached.
Yeah, well, they're hoping he'll want to join, because I know they were originally going to have him in a live action show, but then whatever, it didn't get off the ground then, but hopefully the idea they had then they can finally do now. And speaking of funny, I was talking to Omniblast Michelle the other day, and we were talking about how they brought back Scream, and it's like kind of brought slashers back into the forefront of horror, like, because we wouldn't have got probably Thanksgiving out of it. And then they brought back, obviously, I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I actually said in a conversation, I said, give it a couple of weeks and they'll announce an Urban Legends remake.
Yeah.
The news dropped less than 2 days ago that they're actually working on an Urban Legends remake.
The only thing that like intrigues me about that is like I really didn't care for the original is that they'll be focusing on urban legends of the digital age.
Apparently that's what the plot's going to be. But anyway, we've got Tremors to look forward to, and later tonight, live on the Entertainment Headquarters, I'm doing my 3rd segment on education, my newest segment I've added, and my good friend here, Mr. DJ Anubis, will be returning to the channel, and he's going to be teaching me a little bit about heavy metal. Something I don't really have much knowledge of. I do like odd bands, like I love myself some Iron Maiden. I don't know if they're classed as heavy metal, I'm not sure. I love myself some Motorhead, AC/DC. So I do like the more well-known bands, but hopefully whatever he's going to teach me on, it's going to be some good shit.
I guess Maiden, are they basically a British staple at this point?
Man Priest.
Yeah, they're well loved over here in the UK. They're like probably one of our biggest heavy metal bands export from the UK.
There are very few people, when they think of heavy metal, they don't think of Maiden. Maiden's like a big name. Always has been.
Yeah, and I think it's bullshit to this very day that Iron Maiden are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well,
it's an absolute bullshit. Yeah, you can put people like Dolly freaking Parton in, who's not even rock and roll.
They even have rappers in the Rock and Roll Hall. What I don't mean to. Well, actually, I do mean to sound elitist. Like the one criteria for getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in the name.
Like Missy Elliott's in. You're taking the piss.
There's a hip
Missy
hop Hall of
Elliott.
Fame for her. She's not
Cher's
rock and
now
roll.
being put in, but Cher, I know in the 80s, some of our stuff was like pop rock, so I get it.
Yeah,
But
there's
she even said,
there's a gray area with her.
yeah, she even turned around and said, because I weren't going to, but she told them all they can go to hell. Soon as that was all plastered on the internet, the very next year, the nominator had to go in. So I just think it's hypocritical that she said, where she said, I'm not gonna go in, even if they paid us $1 million, I wouldn't go in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. After she made all this commotion on television, the following year they nominated her and she went into the Hall of Fame. So I do find that very hypocritical. But anyway, moving past that and moving past heavy metal, coming on the channel soon will be the next retro classic movie show where we'll be talking Anubis's pick, which is Reign of Fire. And we also have on I think it's the 3rd of May, the next Kaiju Connections classic review, which is the X from Outer Space. But that's enough from the entertainment headquarters. What's coming to the Metal Tavern Radio?
So as you said, later today, I'll be joining you for the education on heavy metal. That's going to be a lot of fun. I've been putting a lot of work into presenting for that. Sunday, my vintage cult cinema picks back up. I'll have Mr. Jedi Granville as a guest host as we talk and review the movie The Gumball Rally from 1976. So if you were ever fans of movies like Cannonball Run, cars racing across America, that's a lot like that. It has Raul Julia. I'm trying to think of some of the guys who are in that out the head, but it's been a long time since I've watched it, but certainly a great film. We'll be talking about that on Tuesday in the evening. I'll be on Fat Samurai Guy's channel where we're doing another action film autopsy with author Rick Myers. So he'll be giving us the breakdown of the movies he's seen. There's been a lot of buzz about the movie Sinners, which I have yet to see. So I'll be interested in what he's got to say. I know what Mr. Lambert has said. I didn't watch his video yet because I might go watch this, but I don't know if I'm going to go see Thunderbolts first or not, but I'll figure it out.
I thoroughly loved Sinners. If no one's checked out your review for it, I did have Mr. Jedi Granville in with me to do that review. It's available on the channel right now, so I hope you do get to go and see it.
Yeah, it's doing very well on Rotten Tomatoes. Both the audience and critics do love it, so it's getting a lot of high marks. As you said, the Tremors thing for Anthony's birthday is coming up, and then later in the evening, I'll be getting together with Big Bad Wolf as my Kaiju Spotlight picks up again. We're going to be talking about the Kaiju King Caesar. So that's immediately what's coming.
Marvelous. Anthony Jordan, what's coming to your channel?
I got all the stuff recorded. I need to edit my Godzilla versus Megalon review. Then over the course of May, my plan is to get Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and Godzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla knocked out. So June I can be in the Heisei series, and I don't have a date yet, but I'm planning on doing a live stream discussion, and I want to get Sci-Fi Century and Gojira 851 on it for The Last Samurai.
Sounds amazing. I'll do I actually watched that the other night, like a couple of nights ago. I watched The Last Samurai. Probably there's only a handful of films with Tom Cruise I enjoy, and that's definitely one of them. But anyway, gentlemen, as always, this has been a blast having you guys on again to talk about another much loved horror franchise, and there'll be more to come in the future. So from me, from Mr. DJ Anubis, and from Mr. Anthony Jordan, thank you for watching. Please like and share and subscribe to the Entertainment Headquarters, and we'll catch us all at the next one.